So how was your week? Still following? Some of you might be saying, oh, well, I'm trying, but I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. What does it really mean to follow? There's a verse in John's Gospel in the 13th chapter, verse 35, that says, "By this, everyone will know that you are my disciple." Or another way of saying it, by this, everyone will know that you're following me if you love one another. So this morning, I want to share with you a few examples of what that love might look like. In a sermon from a book called A Cast of Characters by Max Lucado, the title of the message is Risky Love. And the key text is taken from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, verses 6 through 13. I'd like to read that passage to you. While Jesus was in Bethany, in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she then poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Artful Eddie, or Easy Eddie, as he was known to his associates, lacked for nothing. He was the slickest of the slick lawyers. He was one of the roars of the Roaring Twenties. He was a crony of Al Capone and ran that gangster's dog tracks. He mastered the simple technique of fixing races by overfeeding 7 dogs and then betting on the 8th. Wealth, status, style, Artful Eddie lacked for nothing. So why did he turn himself in? Why did he offer to squeal on Al Capone? What was his motive? Didn't he know the surefire consequences of ratting out the mob? He knew, but he had made up his mind. What did he have to gain? What could society give him that he didn't already have? He had money, power, prestige. What was the hitch? Eddie revealed the hitch. His son. Eddie had spent his life with the despicable, the deplorable. He had smelled the stench of the underground long enough. And for his son, he wanted something more, something better. He wanted to give his son a name that could be respected. And to give his son a name, he would have to clear his own. Eddie was willing to take a risk so that his son could have a clean slate. Artful Eddie never saw his dream come true because after Eddie had squealed on the mob remembered, and 2 shotgun blasts later silenced him forever. Was his sacrifice worth it? I guess it depends on your perspective. Because for his son, it was worth it. Artful Eddie's boy lived up to the sacrifice. His is one of the best known names in the world. But before we talk about the son, let's talk about the principle at work here. Risky love. Love that takes a chance. Love that goes out on a limb. Love that makes a statement and leaves a legacy. Sacrificial love for someone else. Love that is unexpected, surprising, and stirring. Acts of love that steal the heart and leave impressions on the soul. Acts of love that will never be forgotten. During the last week of Jesus' life on this earth, such an act of love was seen. A demonstration of devotion that the world will never forget. an act of extravagant tenderness in which Jesus was not the giver this time, but rather the recipient. I want you to try and picture the scene. A cluster of friends encircled Jesus around the table, where they recline and enjoying one another's company, eating a meal together, breaking bread together, if you will. The city is Bethany, and the house where they have assembled is Simon's. He was known as Simon the leper, but not any longer. For now he is just Simon. We don't know when Jesus healed him, but we do know what he was like before Jesus healed him. Stooped shoulders, fingerless hand, scabbed arm, an infected back draped in rags, a tattered wrap that hides all of his face except for two screaming white eyes. That was his life before Jesus, before his touch. Was Simon the one that Jesus healed after he delivered the Sermon on the Mount? Was he the one in the 10 who returned to say thank you? Was he one of the 4,000 that Jesus helped in Bethsaida? Was he just one of the nameless myriads that the gospel writers didn't take time to mention? We don't know. But we do know that he had Jesus and his disciples over for a meal in his home. A simple act, but it must have meant a lot to Jesus. After all, the Pharisees were already clearing out a cell for him on death row, and it won't be long until they finger Lazarus as an accomplice, and it could be that the whole lot of them will have their faces on wanted posters before the week is out. It takes nerve to have a wanted man in your home. But it takes even more nerve to put your hand on the sores of a leper. Simon didn't forget what Jesus had done for him. He couldn't forget. Where there had once been a nub, there was now a finger for his daughter to hold. Where there had been ulcerous sores, there was now skin for his wife to caress. And where there had been lonely hours in quarantine, there were now happy hours like this. A house full of friends, table full of food, wonderful fellowship. No, Simon didn't forget. Simon knew what it was like to stare death in the face. He knew what it was like to have no home to call your own. He knew what it was like to be misunderstood. He wanted Jesus to know that if they ever needed a meal and a place to just rest and lay his head for a while, there was one home in Bethany where he could come. Other homes won't be as gracious as Simon's was, because before the week is up, Jesus will spend some time in the high priest's house, the nicest in all of Jerusalem. 3 barns in the back, a beautiful view of the valley, but Jesus will not see the view. He'll only see the false witnesses, hear their lies, and feel the slaps on his face. He won't find hospitality in the home of the high priest. Before this week is up, Jesus will visit the chambers of Herod. Elegant chambers, to be sure. Plenty of servants. Perhaps there's fruit and wine on the table, but Herod won't offer any to Jesus. Herod wants him to do a magic trick. Show me a miracle, country boy. The guards snicker. Before the week is up, Jesus will also visit the home of Pilate. A rare opportunity to stand before the couch of the procurator of all Israel. It should be an honor. It should be a moment to remember, but it won't be. It's a moment the world would just as soon forget. Pilate has the opportunity to perform the world's greatest act of mercy, but he doesn't. I mean, God is in his house, and Pilate doesn't see him. We can't help but wonder, what if? What if Pilate had come to the defense of the innocent? After all, his wife came to him and says, don't have anything to do with this man. And I had a dream about him. And he's an innocent man. What if he had intervened and pardoned him of all charges? What if Herod had asked Jesus for help instead of for entertainment? What if the high priest had been as concerned about the truth as he was in keeping his position? What if any single one of them had just turned his back on the crowd and his face toward the Christ and made a stand? What if? Of course, we know Jesus willingly died. That he could have called legions of angels to protect him, to not have to endure the agony of the cross. He went there willingly for you and me. No one was willing to take that chance because the mountain of prestige was too high. The fall would have been too great, but Simon took the risk. You see, risky love seizes the moment. Simon took a chance. He gave Jesus a good meal. It wasn't much, but it was more than most. And when the priests accused and the soldiers slapped, perhaps Jesus remembered what Simon had done, and he was strengthened. And when he remembered Simon's meal, perhaps he remembered Mary's gesture. Maybe he could even still smell the perfume. And it's not unlikely that he could, because after all, it was 12 ounces worth of expensive perfume. Imported, concentrated, sweet, strong enough to scent a man's clothes for days. I mean, between the lashings, I wonder if he relived that moment as he hugged that Roman post and braced himself for the next ripping of his back. Did he remember the oil that had soothed his skin? Could he, in the faces of the women who stared, see the small, soft face of Mary who cared so lavishly? She was the only one who believed him. I mean, whenever he spoke of his death, others just kind of shrugged, not understanding what he was really talking about. They doubted what Jesus was saying. After all, his popularity was at an all-time high on the day he rode into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. How could they turn so quickly? But Mary believed. Mary believed because he spoke with a firmness that she had heard once before. Lazarus, come out. And her brother came out. After 4 days in a stone-sealed grave, he walked out. And as Mary kissed the now warm hands of her just dead brother, she turned and looked and saw Jesus smiling. Tear streaks were dry. The teeth shone from beneath his beard. He was smiling, and in her heart she knew that she would never doubt his words again. So when he spoke of his death, she believed. When she saw the three of them together, she couldn't resist. Simon, the healed leper, Lazarus. Oh my goodness. The resurrected corpse leaning in to see what Jesus had just said. And Jesus, the source of life for both of them, beginning his joke a second time. Now's the right time, she said to herself. It was not an act of impulse. I mean, she had carried the large vial of perfume from her house to Simon's. So it was not a spontaneous gesture, but it was an extravagant one. In fact, we're told that that perfume was worth an entire year's worth of wages. Can you imagine? A willingness to sacrifice an entire year of your wages to pour it all out in one spontaneous gesture of love. It wasn't the logical thing to do, but since when has love ever been led by logic? Oh, the stupid things we do for love sometimes. Logic had not touched Simon. Common sense hadn't wept at Lazarus' tomb. Practicality didn't feed the crowds or love the children. Love did. Extravagant, risky, chance-taking love. And now someone needs to show the same to the giver of such love. So Mary did. She stepped up behind him and stood with the jar in her hand. And within a couple of moments, every mouth went silent. Every eye was wide as they watched her nervous fingers begin to remove the ornate cover. Only Jesus apparently was unaware of her presence. Just as he finally noticed everyone looking behind him, she began to pour the contents over his head, over his shoulders, as it ran down his back. She would have poured herself out if she could have. The fragrance immediately rushed through the room. Smells of cooked lamb and herbs were lost in the aroma of the sweet ointment. Wherever you go, this gesture spoke. Breathe the aroma and remember someone who cares. On his skin, he now bore the fragrance of faith. In his clothing, the balm of belief. Even as the soldiers divided up his garments at the foot of the cross, I can't help but think that her gesture brought a bouquet into a cemetery. The sweet perfume once again filling the air at the foot of the cross. The other disciples had mocked her extravagance. They thought it foolish. Seems kind of ironic considering that Jesus had saved them from a sinking boat in a stormy sea, and He had enabled them to heal others and to preach. He had brought focus into their fuzzy lives. They, the recipients of exorbitant love, now chastise her for her generosity. Why waste the perfume? We could have sold it for a large sum of money and given that money away to the poor to help needy people. Don't miss Jesus' quick defense of Mary. Why are you troubling this woman? She has done an excellent thing for me. Jesus' message is just as powerful today as it was then. Don't miss it. There is a time for risky love. There is a time for extravagant gestures. There's a time to pour out your affection on one you love. And when the time comes, seize it. Don't miss it. The young husband is packing up his wife's belongings. His task is solemn. His heart is heavy. He never dreamed that she would die so young, but the cancer came so surely, so quickly. At the bottom of the drawer in her dresser, he finds a box. A negligee, never worn. Still wrapped in paper. She was always waiting for a special occasion, he said to himself. Always waiting. As the boy on the bicycle watches the students taunt, he churns inside because the one that they're picking on, the one that they're taunting, is his little brother. He knows he should step in and stand up for his little brother, but those are his friends that are doing the teasing. What will they think? And because it matters to him what they think, he turns and pedals away. At the store, the husband looks in the jewelry case and rationalizes, sure, she would want the watch, but it's too expensive. She's a practical woman. She'll understand. I'll just get the bracelet today. I'll buy the watch someday. The enemy of risky love is a snake whose tongue has mastered the talk of deception. Someday, he hisses. Someday I'll take her on that cruise. Someday I'll have time to call and chat. Someday the children will understand why I was so busy. But you know the truth, don't you? You know it before I even say it. In fact, many of you could say it probably a whole lot better than I can. Some days never come. Always waiting. And the price of practicality is sometimes higher than the price of extravagance. But the rewards of risky love are always greater than its cost. Go to the effort. Invest the time. Write the letter. Make the apology. Take the trip. Purchase the gift. Do it. The seized opportunity renders joy. The neglected opportunity brings regret. The reward was great for Simon. He was privileged to give rest to the one who had created the earth. Think of it. Your Creator reclining at His table, eating a meal with Him. Wow. Simon's gesture will never be forgotten. Neither will Mary's. In fact, Jesus promised wherever the good news of the gospel is preached in all the world, what this woman has done will be told and people will remember her. Simon and Mary, examples of the risky gift of love given at just the right time. Which brings us back to Artful Eddie. The Chicago mobster who squealed on Al Capone so that his son could have a fair chance and a new name. If Eddie had lived to see his son Butch grow up, he would have been proud. He would have been proud of Butch's appointment to Annapolis. He would have been proud of his commissioning as a World War II Navy pilot. He would have been proud as he read of his son downing 5 bombers in the Pacific night and saving the lives of hundreds of crewmen on the aircraft carrier Lexington. The name was cleared. The Congressional Medal of Honor that Butch received for his heroic actions that night was proof. When people say the name O'Hare in Chicago, they don't think gangsters. They think aviation heroism. And now when you say his name, you have something else to think about. Think about the undying dividends of risky love. Think about it the next time you hear it. Think about it the next time you fly into the airport named after the son of a gangster gone good. The son of Eddie O'Hare. What opportunities exist today, right now, for you to show risky love? What's stopping you from taking the risk? Who needs that special touch from you? Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for the reminder this morning in our worship, in this text, of a key moment in the life of Jesus just before He went to the cross. Father, words can't begin to express our appreciation, our thankfulness for what Jesus has done on our behalf, because we know that we are so undeserving. And Father, I thank you so much for this example from both Simon and Mary of an opportunity to pour out love upon Jesus. And you have redeemed us. For those who have chosen to follow you, to place their trust in you, you have chosen us to share that same kind of sacrificial love with the people around us. A risky, daring, chance-taking love, expecting nothing in return, but just the fact that we are willing to pour out our lives for you. Father, I believe that there are many people that you are calling us to love. The fact alone that is the single most identifying characteristic of a follower of Jesus is the fact that we love one another. But Father, that love is sometimes we kind of keep the lid on it. We kind of pick and choose and are very selective on who we love and who we choose not to love. But if there's one thing that's clear from Scripture, from Jesus' sacrifice on the cross is that He loves everyone. That He died for everyone. That we are to love in such a way that others might experience your love, your forgiveness, your mercy, your grace. And that begins when we lavish that upon others. Thank you. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen.